Hey guys, this is Gerald from JGP Designs, and I want to give you guys a little showcase on some of the sensors that we've been using for testing and some of the sensors that we also think are very cool and that we'll be doing further testing with for oil and for other things in our cars using our JGP box. So one of the things is that this is one of the sensors that we've currently been using quite often now. This is the AudioX sensor that is tapered for 1/8 NPT with a steel body and a GT 150 style connector. These ones we've tested up to 120C and they do actually work very well and reliable. These are from an aftermarket company, so these are not like OEM type of sensors. Uh, we did test using genuine Honeywell sensors, but unfortunately, and those sensors are rated for 120C also with data sheet and really good vibration and harshness level, acceptable levels for an automotive setting. Unfortunately, those sensors at the moment they don't seem to be in stock but from the manufacturer, and it looks like it might be taking a little while before those get back into resellers or distributors. So that's why we haven't been able to sell any of those sensors going for now. But unlike these ones we did test for the proper temperature, and these ones do work. Um, there is some Chinese copies of these ones that are only rated, I believe, up to 80C or 100C, which don't tend to work so well, which are very similar to the AEM sensor or oil pressure sensors that are only rated up to 100 psi, which we believe it's a little bit too low for like sensing range, because on a cold start, if you're using heavyweight oil, you will see probably north of 110 plus psi on sensors. Plus, also that we had one of our testers using our JGP box on a AEM sensor, and unfortunately, after you hit a certain temperature, I believe it was like 95 to 100, the pressure of the sensor tended to start dropping off pretty quickly, so we couldn't get accurate readings on those sensors, and it inevitably came up to be basically sensor failure at a certain temperature. So we switched to these for that person, and all of a sudden their oil pressure temp, it was perfectly well. So yeah, just a little FYI on these cheaper style cheaper sensors, or like the AEMs, or like the knockoff Chinese ones that are clones of this one basically. The next type of sensor that we've been looking at is GM style sensors. So there's a couple of different ones that we have here. This one is actually a female tapered one, which is an M10, I believe, by 1.0. And these ones are using more of the traditional GM style connector. Very similar to the ones that are used for flex fuel sensors on those ones. But these ones are keyed a little bit differently. These wings actually do matter a lot, as the flex fuel sensor connectors will not fit these, and they have their own type of connectors. These ones are rated, the genuine OEM ones are rated to, I believe, 120, so they do tend to work well, and these are the body is actually made out of brass. Another one that we have here is another GM style pressure sensor. These ones are pretty interesting because they are actually tapered on, instead of 1/8, it's 1/4 NPT connector. And as you can see, this is also a brass body. But this is actually using a typical GT 150 style connector. And if you want the part number, that's the part number for these ones. These ones are also rated at a 120C. So these are all genuine sensors that you can use as replacements. And the pressure sending units actually are very similar to the voltages needed to getting all these to work. The next GM part number, but these ones actually come from a cheaper remanufacturer of these type of sensors. As you can see, that's the part number right there. All for these ones are a little bit different. The body is actually made out of aluminum instead of brass or steel, and they come with a crush ring in order to seal up, basically up against the surface, mating surface, or whatever you're screwing this into. The the thread pitch, I believe, is an M14 by 100, if I remember correctly. But unfortunately, I couldn't get that much data sheets on these ones because these tend to be kind of on the cheaper side for for whoever manufactures these. Although the pinout does actually work fine with the standard pinout for the GT150 style connectors. We really don't know what the rating is on these ones till we can test these out ourselves. So the next style of sensors we'll showcase right now are more of the European style, and one of the main brands that typically tends to make these are called Hella. This manufacturer actually manufactures a lot of Volkswagen, BMW, and I believe Volvo stuff. So as you can see here, we have a BMW style oil level sensor. This goes basically at the bottom of the pan. There is an O-ring sealant here with 3 bolts that go across into the oil pan itself, and these sensors are actually digital. So they do have your standard ground, 12 volts, and the digital output, and they do measure oil level, but they also have a built-in temperature sensor, so you can actually sense the temperature of the oil inside the oil pan, unlike the other style temperature sensors. These ones, like I said, are fully digital, so it's kind of like a PWM with a certain time delay that could tell you like what the temperature is and what the oil level is for these things. So that's how these things send multiple types of data. They even have diagnostic data, so the sensor itself can know if it's failing and then transmit it over to the box or the sensor or whatever it's using to read. Next one on our list here that we have is this one. This is a kind of a weird off, which I have some labels here, but this is a fuel pressure sensor. So the way this one works is that this one comes from I believe a Volvo V50 or a Q50 or a Q60, I believe, or something like that. What's actually pretty interesting about these is that pressure sensor, it comes with this new style of connector. And what's interesting about these specific sensors is that they're actually tapered for a quick disconnect style connector. So if we pull this out, kind of the quick style disconnects that a lot of Japanese cars tend to use, this sensor works with them. And the important thing is that it works with 5/16 fuel line. So yeah, which is interesting because most of GM sensors, they're at 3/8 for the fuel quick disconnects. So yeah, these will basically be almost plug and play for Japanese cars, so including the twins. The next thing we have here, which is probably one of the most common oil pressure sender units in German cars. This one is definitely used in a ton of BMWs. This one is a little different. Of course, the same type connector as the one I showed you previously, but the threading on this one is an M12 by 1.5, I believe. And the way this one works is that there is a seal up against the body of your mating surface, basically. These ones are actually very accurate. We did test out the temperature on these ones up to 120 C, and they do actually work pretty fine. They work actually exceptionally very well. So one of the things that we're going to do sooner or later is test out one of our oil galley plugs, basically, and tap it and made it to this M by 12, so we can run test along with this. And because our IO box does have multiple inputs, we'll go ahead and do a comparison chart between the different sensors on the accuracy of different ones, and also include the temperature data of the oil, which will give us a good indication on failure points on some of these sensors. But the most promising one out of all the sensors that we've tested so far that I know will definitely work for future replacements, or if anybody else needs other types of sensors, is definitely this GM style quarter MPT, because you can get them in OEM quality, and then also these ones that are like the European style ones with M12 by 1.5. And then these ones you can actually get them pretty cheap, and they're pretty bountiful because most BMWs actually tend to use this sensor. And then another sensor that's probably the most interesting one out of all of them that BMW uses on their higher end cars is this sensor right here. The most interesting, there's a ton of interesting things about the sensor right here. Not only this sensor measures oil pressure, but it also measures oil temperature. So as you can see, it has a little plastic thing here. It's like a diverter that allows oil to flow into it and then out of it, which helps it monitor also temperature. So, and on this one, it is tapered also for M12 by 1.5, I believe. And instead of the O-ring being in the center, it's actually in the outer edge. So there is a little bit more consideration whenever you need an adapter for this one for whatever oil galley plug that you're thinking of using. Another thing that's kind of weird about this one, it is using a plastic housing. That's a high temperature rated plastic, but I think that's one of the greatest upsides about this sensor itself is that this sensor is actually rated at 160 degrees Celsius. So this has a much better accuracy than all the other sensors combined, basically. Well, I wouldn't say combined, but yeah. And the second thing too is that not only does it measure your oil pressure and your oil temperature, it also only uses 3 pins, the same as the others that we have. And the kind of the important thing about this one is it is also a digital sensor, the same as the other Hella sensor that we have here. The same thing as the other one. The sensor itself has diagnostic systems built in inside, so it knows when the sensor is going bad, and it could also transmit that. And it basically is a digital output. Because this is plastic, it doesn't transfer any heat from the body of where you're screwing this onto to the sensors that are actually built in inside. So that's why it gets its very high rating, temperature rating, and its accuracy is, I believe, plus or minus 1 Kelvin at 160 degrees temperature. So its temperature rating is actually extremely good. So if you guys ever want the part numbers for this one here, as you can see, there it is. Yeah, so couple of different sensors that we have here. We'll go ahead and start measuring all of these sensors and comparing them with each other, and probably giving a spreadsheet on which one's the best, and also a comparison in terms of price, which all of these can vary depending if you get them directly from an OEM to anywhere between $60 to $50, all the way down to to $20 for some OEM quality or OEM style sensors. And a lot of these can actually be found in I believe the really good aftermarket companies that make sensors, like AC Delco. Does carry a lot of these part numbers, so you can get like really good reliable sensors for a lot cheaper that you would typically get from the OEM. So yeah, thank you guys.